But in terms of my my own personal opinion, Kamala Harris, like I said, I need to see more. Obviously, she is still very much responsible for a lot of the actions of the current administration from where I'm standing, especially in terms of like what's going on in Gaza. Okay. Start with Harris topping Trump in favorability ratings and also in the latest polls in many key states. I'm going to pee real quick.
And our political director and Washington bureau chief, Rick Klein, to break down the latest polls for us. Good morning to you, Rick.
Yeah, good morning, Robin. As Rachel said, this is an entirely different race than it was just a week ago. And one thing is for certain, it is close. We've had 4 major polls come out just since Joe Biden left the race and endorsed Harris. You have anything from a Harris +2 to a Trump +3, basically a tied race, all within the margin of error. We've also gotten some initial battleground state polling that's encouraging for Democrats. A tie in Pennsylvania. Trump up by just a single point in Wisconsin. That's better than Joe Biden was doing in both of those states. He was trailing in the 538 polling average right before he left the race. And it has been quite a honeymoon for Vice President Harris. Just in the space of a week. So a week ago, 35% of the country saw her favorably. Now it is up to 43. That includes a big jump among independents. She is now the very rare politician viewed more favorably than unfavorably, at least for the moment. On the other side, we've seen the opposite happen for Donald Trump. Coming out of his convention and that assassination attempt. We talked last week. He had got to a 4-year high in favorability of 40%. Now it's down to the mid-30s, back where it's been for a long time. And J.D. Vance, this has not been a good debut week for him. The number of people who view him unfavorably jumped by 8 points in the space of a week. Look at that gap, 15 points underwater overall, Robin.
And overall, Rick, it does appear that with the voters, that they're more pleased with this current matchup than they were with the rematch with Biden and Trump.
Yeah, we've seen a big shift in that, Robin. Just a week ago, 14% of the country said they were unfavorably inclined to support either one of the candidates. They were.
J.D. Vance and Ron DeSantis are cut from the same cloth. It's the Sugar Man cloth. And it's so funny that that is like supposed to be the future of the Republican Party, which is like a technocratic approach to Donald Trump's policy agenda, which is basically just like post hoc pieced together after Donald Trump says something, not realizing that like Donald Trump carries his base in a cult-like fashion, and it's not actually the sound policy making that is the reason why people like him. And it's a complete misread from the Republican Party. This is something that I've mentioned a bunch of times. Republicans don't realize that their agenda is just genuinely reprehensible and that people don't like it if you're just like a nerdy guy who is like being nerdy about your racism or being nerdy about your sexism. Like a little bit of like racism and sexism obviously plays well to the base, right? But you can't go beyond. You can't just like deliver detailed analysis in the form of scientific racism to try to justify your belief system, right? And I think that they are leaning into that because I think that they just like bought Twitter and they just thought that they could like manipulate people into thinking this way. They thought that, you know, they were genuinely popular, not realizing that like all of the policies that they've pushed for are not necessarily things that people are desperately demanding. Like their base of support is not desperately demanding that you, I don't know, fucking dunk on a bunch of like random trans teenagers. Like most people just don't give a shit. You know what I mean? That's not a real thing that people are like desperate for, you know? Like even in the Republican Party, no one is like, oh yeah, I can't wait for penis inspection day in schools, dog. Like I love that shit. That's weird. That's just gross. Why the fuck do you care about this so much? And I think that they're just going to keep doing that, even though that exact mentality led to a awful, disastrous 2022 midterm outcome for them. And the fact that the Republicans, or the fact that the Trump campaign thinking that they were going to still run against Joe Biden went with like an easy base pick with J.D. Vance, even though it was like just an awful choice overall. is a clear-cut indication that they are too far gone and too lost in the sauce to change course, change trajectory, change their messaging. I've said this before. I've said this time and time again. I said this in 2022. I said this on multiple different occasions for the past couple of years now, that the Republicans personally forgot how to run in a post-Trump world. They forgot how to run like good campaigns. They forgot how to appeal to normal people, and have mistaken their own success in state legislatures for genuine popular momentum and broad support for some of their most violent policy agendas. And it's really weird. They're just getting really fucking weird with it. And it's not just me saying like, oh, Republicans are so fascist. Like, they are literally just leaning into that. And I don't think they understand that, like, there is a level of how thin the average normal, possible Republican Party voter is, and how grossed out they will be when they constantly see like, America is run by cat ladies who don't have children, like that's not good, man. That's weird. Like, you're just fucking weird. I don't know how else to describe it.
These
This is a
18
Vox
states.
video from 6 months ago that explains how they're doing that. Okay, we'll look at it in a little bit. And it's odd. Like, JD Vance and Ron DeSantis are so similar on that front. JD Vance and Ron DeSantis are so similar on that front in the way that they are leaning into Trump's culture war narratives, but actually trying to push policy. If you remember, I talked about Little Rhonda quite a bit when he was chosen as the pick to Donald Trump by the Republican Party. Establishment Republicans thought that Donald Trump was too volatile and potentially was going to be poison for the broader electorate. And at the time I said, in 2022, I said two things. Either they continue leaning into this weird shit and they lose the elections going forward, or they successfully radicalize a large enough base of support beyond the MAGA cult into being just as insane, genuinely, openly, mentally ill. If you remember, at the time I said, like, either people are going to become like transvestigators across the board, like every Republican that would otherwise be living in like the suburbs with like a real job or whatever is going to become like this Matt Walsh style transvestigator and like have their brains absolutely get broken by this kind of 24/7 news cycle, like constantly pumping out this fucking narrative over and over again. Or they're going to negatively polarize towards that sort of thing and either stay at home, not vote, or vote for the Democratic Party, right? And I think it seems to me right now that the Republican base of support is still kind of crumbling. Like, I don't think they've picked up additional people that are brain rotted, or at least in enough numbers as the people that they still hemorrhaged from the base of support. Okay? Do you feel me? For those of you who don't know, when you get stage, I've said this quite a bit as well. There is like a level of brain rot that everybody has. Earthquake? I didn't even feel it. What the fuck? In Simi Valley? It must have been a real small one. You know what will really help? A middle ground video. Okay. We need to be careful about roasting JD before the Ohio ballot date, or else Trump might replace him 10 days ago. Dude, that would be chaos. Are you kidding me? If Trump swapped out JD Vance right now, that would look so disordered. Like, I think he's locked in. He has to be. Just like some of you are locked into debating me at the top of the hour so you can serve the 3-minute ad break. Trump is basically destined not to see a 3-minute ad break at the top of the hour, but instead destined to run this ticket with JD Vance by his side, right? Apparently Elon Musk and other billionaires from that group and his son told him to pick JD Vance. They fucked him over. Donald Trump Jr. is plays a big role in this as well. But subscribing at the top of the hour will play a big role in this for you if you no longer want to see the ads at the top of the hour. Like I said, for $6 or for free with Twitch Prime, you too can subscribe at the top of the hour. Or maybe you can get gifted a sub if you're lucky. Here's a 3-minute ad break now. May Poontang, thank you for the 10 gifted subs. And Daily Donut, thank you for the 5 gifted subs. It's kind of wild. It's kind of breaking my brain to watch Democrats' strategy shift from when they go low, we go high, to Republicans are a bunch of weird pedophiles in the span of like 3 weeks. Yeah, I mean, it's great. It's awesome. It's smart. It's fucking good. Ryan's brain is breaking because like it's good instincts, and Democrats usually never do that. I said this since day one. I've been a fucking big time advocate for this since day fucking one. This is literally what they should be saying since 2022. They should have been running this before 2022, but it's correct. Where is it? I posted about this as well. Let me see if I can find it. I think it was after Walt said something too. Yeah, I mean, look, I said going for the weird vote. Americans with children should face the consequences of the reality. Where the fuck is Waltz? This rhetoric is correct and will win over lots of people. Republicans have objectively become a weirdo party. They're super focused on random groups of people that aren't doing harm to anyone. They're too sweaty about it, too moralizing, too online. It cost them big wins in 2022. And I stand by that. I stand by that. About the vibe shift, I watched and read about 24 focus groups in the last 10 days, and overwhelmingly everyone knows Trump. And either you love him without reservation or feel ick about him, no in between. Almost all swing voters are open to her now, and everyone wants to see Kamala, what Kamala can do. They all give her a clash break from Biden. When you were calling the months in advance, did you think Vance would be this bad? I said he was one of the worst picks he could have gone with. Yes, for all of the reasons that are in full display. I just didn't know how negatively people would respond to him. But yeah, no, this is precisely the reason why I said he's a fucking horrible pick. A lot of people immediately go, oh, but like he's more competent than Trump. He's going to be scarier. It's like, no, dude. No, he was less popular in his state. Guys, when you're picking for a VP, why the fuck do you go to a lock like Ohio? Ohio is a red lock at this point. It's no longer a fucking swing state. Okay? Ohio was a red lock. And not only was Ohio a red lock, bro, get someone to make a comp of you predicting things like swapping Biden out being good and show the DNC how good your political instincts are. I don't think the DNC gives a fuck about how good my political instincts are. Let's be real. Because, you know, if it were up to me, I'd swap out a lot more. But I told you guys, a guy like JD Vance that is less popular than Donald Trump in the state of Ohio is a ridiculous pick to begin with. Donald Trump outperformed JD Vance in the state of Ohio by 3 points. Not only that, but also JD Vance was on a ballot with the fucking governor of Ohio. The governor of Ohio is a much more moderate Republican. Red states oftentimes will have like states in general in the gubernatorial race only care about who the person is. Party affiliation goes out the window. But the governor of Ohio is a significantly more moderate figure in the Republican Party across the board. And also, in general, he was like significantly more moderate than JD Vance. Okay? He outperformed JD Vance on that same ballot by 20 points. 20 points. Was it a different ballot? I thought it was on the same one. I might be remembering it differently. The wine is barely moderate. Dude, for the modern Republican Party, the wine, especially with like any red governor in a red state that did some kind of like COVID restrictions is moderate. Any governor in a fucking red ass state that isn't like as aggro as like punishing women for getting abortions is going to be considered a moderate. Okay? I thought it was on the same ballot. So overall, the point is not that like Trump should have picked the wine as his VP, by the way. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just using that juxtaposition to show you how bad of a pick JD Vance was, even in the state of Ohio, a state that you don't need to like pick up any additional support from anyway. That's why this pick was ass. David Sachs, Elon Musk, and Tucker Carlson. With the exception of Tucker Carlson, listening to David Sachs, Elon Musk, and Donald Trump Jr. is the dumbest fucking thing you can do. I'll find the clips where you 100% said if the Republicans lean on this trans hate, they're going to come across weird to the average voter. Yeah. Anyway, it looks like they didn't pick JD to win the election, but the lockdown and MAGA future, none of the reasons listed were to help win Ohio. Yeah, but you don't understand. There is no fucking MAGA future with JD Vance either. I think the only real reason for JD Vance was he's the bag man, as someone in the chat also correctly pointed out. Do you see what I'm saying? He brings in tech bro support. He brings in the big bag, a big old bag from a lot of right-wing VC funded, VC backed Silicon Valley weirdos and losers. And that's it. And I think it was dumb. And even Burgum would have been better, honestly. But yeah, I don't really care what he has to say there, but let's continue on with this.
Where you call them the double haters. Now that number is cut in half. And check this out. The enthusiasm gap that Democrats have worried about, at least for now, entirely erased. Democrats enthusiastic about Kamala Harris's candidacy, just like Republicans are for Trump. And this is a striking number. 49% of independents say they are enthusiastic about Kamala Harris. Compare that number to Trump's, and you see how this race has been turned on its head, Robin.
All right, Rick, our thanks to you.
Here in the U.S., there are new signs of strength for the Kamala Harris presidential campaign, including new poll numbers and a growing financial haul. Meanwhile, former President Donald Trump is turning up the heat on her with a series of personal attacks. Nancy Cordes is at the White House. Nancy, tell us more.
Good morning, Michelle. The Harris campaign says it brought in $200 million in the first week of her candidacy. That is a record. It's also touting more than 170,000 new volunteers. Now, the campaign says that this is a sign of pent-up interest in the race as the party converges around a new message about the Republican nominees, arguing they're weird.
Are you actually excited about Kamala? What is this, brother? I'm just giving you what is going on. I'm giving you what the actual battlefield looks like. Okay? As far as Kamala Harris goes, I have my reservations. I've talked quite a bit about what I think she could possibly do that would fuck up the bag that she currently has. Okay? I'm offering you analysis on what, and I'm telling you what is going on the ground, and I'm telling you what my potential picks are, my potential predictions are. Okay? And a lot of what I've told you was 100% correct. I told you that a lot of the double haters just hated how old Biden was, that the Democratic Party's platform across the board wasn't the issue. It was actually who was saying it that was the issue. And I showed you at the time the numbers for down ballot Democrat senators, okay, outperforming Joe Biden by 10 points in some of these key fucking states. I told you this over and over again. Just like I told you for years that Biden is too old, he would be a one-term president, and that was ridiculous to drop the incumbents advantage and many of the other complications that come with having a really old president. And yet, since 2019, I've been fucking saying this, and nobody wanted to listen to me. I'm glad that the Democratic Party got together and got their shit in order and actually did something smart for once, did something competent for once. Okay? But in terms of my my own personal opinion, Kamala Harris, like I said, I need to see more. Obviously, she is still very much responsible for a lot of the actions of the current administration from where I'm standing, especially in terms of like what's going on in Gaza. Okay. And I need to see a change in not only messaging, but like actual action from her on that front. I am a firm believer that Americans don't necessarily give a shit about foreign policy, okay? And I think Trump recognizes that, or rather, Americans not only don't give a shit about foreign policy, but Americans also are more pro-peace and like less war than we give them credit for. As long as war is happening and like they don't have to think about it, they're fine with it. They don't give a shit. But like pro-peace my ass? No, dude, you don't understand. When people are campaigning, think about how Trump campaigns. Think about how Trump successfully campaigned in 2016. He literally tried and successfully, in my opinion, outflanked Hillary Clinton as a warmonger. Understand that I don't believe Trump is a dove, okay? I'm saying on the messaging front, Trump presented a better message on how he was going to end wars and stop wars, and how Hillary Clinton had been a formative figure in America getting into all these fucking wars. People forgot this for some goddamn reason. You mean he made it seem like she was a warmonger? No, she was a warmonger. And Trump put that in full display. But think about that. What does that represent? What does that mean? What does that mean in terms of she is a warmonger? She is a war hawk. Okay? Americans, in terms of the aesthetics, Americans are significantly more open-minded to a pro-peace message than a pro-war message. Okay? Donald Trump is currently running on no new wars happened under my presidency. Look at how many wars happened under Joe Biden. Now, luckily for the Democratic Party's prospects at this upcoming election, a lot of that stink is not on Kamala Harris. Okay? This is a massive W for the Democrats. They should lean on that and change trajectory, both on the narrative front and maybe even get some fucking solid wins. If some kind of commitment to a ceasefire, which Israel is never going to play ball, obviously, but if some kind of fucking commitment to a ceasefire and an actual ceasefire happens before this upcoming election, that would play phenomenally well for the Democratic Party. Okay? In terms of my own personal opinion on the matter, I think we need to see much more than just like a commitment to a ceasefire. But the reason why I talk about Trump's messaging is that even though Trump is not a fucking dove by any means whatsoever, and his actions in office prove that reality, he still presents himself as that. Why? Because Americans are open-minded to that, okay? Even if it's just for the aesthetics. And Democrats, whenever they fucking talk about NATO or talk about how many military bases we have, they are only talking to a handful of voters that care about the military industrial complex. They're not talking to the broader Americans. Because if you were to straight up ask average Americans, like, would you rather have 800 military bases all around the planet or free healthcare? I think that the majority of Americans, possibly by like overwhelming majority margins, would say, no, I want healthcare, and I want education, I want infrastructure, instead of having bases. Let's have military bases and then have the other shit. You know, the only way that Israel could potentially do a ceasefire is if America says we're cutting aid until you fucking do the ceasefire. That's it. And the reality is because America fuck about foreign policy overall and have a tendency to at least respond positively to a less wars, please narrative, even when it's coming from psychopathic neocons like the Republican Party, who will then turn around and be like, yeah, we need to not go to war with Russia so we can go to war with China, which is fucking insane. Democrats lean into that and try to outflank them on the war hawk narrative. And also, simultaneously, they look like they're responsible for so many wars. They take ownership over it. That's not a good idea at all. It's a bad idea. I swear the staffers that watch you are the ones that convince Harris to run with the conservatives a weird narrative because you've been saying that shit for years, Lamau. Maybe they just kind of arrived at that on their own. I don't know. I was talking to my normie friends this weekend, like some of which are the classic, like middle of the ground, don't pay attention to shit. And they fucking hate JD Vance. They objectively, legitimately right-wing adjacent people, center right to right-wing adjacent people, heard the JD Vance cat ladies quote and were like disgusted by it. They heard that and were like, that's so ridiculous. It's so gross. So I'm telling you, they're going along with very, very weird vibes, and they're becoming normie repellent, more so than even 2022 somehow. They're scaring the hoes. You can't do this like sweaty groiper 4chan shit, okay? Because in broad daylight in public, things are very different. When you're on the main stage, things are very different. I'll give you an example from my life, right? People clip shit out of context all the time. People talk about how fucking soy I am all the time, right? But if I'm like standing next to a normal human being, there's a difference there. You can't actually cut that narrative. It cuts across that narrative. What people can see in the real world is very different than what plays well online. Online, you can make the sweatiest, fucking weirdest, grossest arguments, especially if you're like if you tap into the right algorithm, it will present you with a false reality, and it will cause you to think that your advocacy is actually more popular than it really is to the median voter. Anyway, my right-wing adjacent friends are so obsessed with trans people, Twitter has literally broken them. Yeah.
We are going to win.
Vice President Kamala Harris didn't just rake in campaign cash this weekend. She also experienced a polling surge. In a new ABC News Ipsos poll, her favorability rating rose to 43%, up from 35% just a week ago. Among independents, it shot up 16 points, as her opponent, Donald Trump, saw his drop by 8.
She has no clue. She's evil.
Trump tested out a series of new personal attacks this weekend.
I'm running against a low IQ individual.
Kamala Harris is deadly destructive.
It's so funny that he's running with this when the Republican Party, like establishment Republicans who are psychos themselves, like Mike Johnson, for example, recognize that that is not a smart play. Mike Johnson immediately was like, yo, cut this DEI shit out. Stop calling her a slut. Stop calling her fucking low IQ. You guys this is not a smart play. But they can't stop themselves. That's the one instinct they have. Okay? Is she a scary attorney general who loves locking black men and women in prison? Who is like clever and devilish and very radical? Or is she a dumb phony? Is she a dumb who doesn't deserve her position of power at all and was a DEI pick? These things, like, you have to figure out at least one of those two angles. They try to do this with Joe Biden too. They would be like, Joe Biden is so old, he doesn't know his ass from his elbow. And then when he would pop off and have like a unique moment where he could, deliver like an uninterrupted message, they would turn around and go, look at how evil and scary he is. And you can't do both. Which one is it? Is he actually a clever devil, or is he a fucking dumbass? It's crazy.
Destruction of America's borders is completely and totally disqualifying for her to be president.
Harris had this response at a fundraiser in Massachusetts.
And you may have noticed Donald Trump has been resorting to some wild lies about my record, and some of what he and his running mate are saying, well, it's just plain weird.
She got some backup from potential running mates.
If he wants to see a bum, he ought to look in the mirror.
Who held events on her behalf around the country.
We're not afraid of weird people.
Dude, I love that he's like trying to look younger. He's trying to look younger. You see that? Yeah, his biggest weakness is that he appears much older than he actually is. This is classic fascism, though. They need their enemies to be weak because power equals good, but they also need them to be scary and all-powerful because the threat needs to be real. No, I know. My enemy's both weak and strong. I know. But like, narratively in the moment, it just like doesn't make sense. You got to lean on to like whichever one is the more successful strategy. And because they don't have like adequate line of attack against Kamala Harris, they haven't been able to figure out which side they want to lean on. And worst of all, they just keep saying over and over again, that like Kamala Harris is fucking dumbass and she's a DEI hire, she's a whore, she's a childless woman, all this psycho shit. And that's not good narrative. At a certain point, with respect to Donald Trump, that's what the Democrats did too. They keyed in on his own personality over and over again. A little too much, right? They just kept leaning into Trump's personality. That's what Hillary Clinton did. Wait, saying weird doesn't mean you're saying you're weak? No. What?
No. We're a little bit creeped out, but we're not afraid.
They also went after Trump for this unusual plea he made to Christian conservatives.
Christians, get out and vote just this time.
This one was crazy. This bar, we got to cover this extensively, okay? I'm going to cover this extensively. He went on Turning Point Action and just fucking banged.
Just this time. You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed. It'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore, my beautiful Christians.
The Harris campaign said he
Like, what the fuck do you mean, bro?
was signaling an end to democracy.
Like, what does that even mean? Why did you say that? Even when I saw that, I was like, what the fuck? Is he all right? Is his brain all right? What the fuck is going on? He also said, I'm not Christian. Yeah, that part is like, I think he said, I'm a Christian, but it sounded like he said, I'm not Christian. That you're not going to get a lot of play there. I think like Republicans are not going to hear him saying, I'm not Christian. It doesn't make sense. Why the fuck would he say that anyway? Why would he say, I'm not Christian? Maybe at most a Freudian slip, you know?
Republicans weren't sure what he meant.
I think he was just trying to make a hyperbolic point that it can be fixed as long as he gets back into office and all that.
I think he's obviously making a joke about how bad things have been under Joe Biden.
Trump's running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, gave this.
No, you guys are doing great. Great way to defend those statements. That is a completely nutty ass thing to say.
Explanation to CBS News.
So I think he's saying, get out there, make sure this election matters, because if you don't, the next 4 years, we may not have a real election if the Democrats give illegal aliens the right to vote.
What?
It's important to note the Democrats have not suggested that undocumented migrants should get the right to vote anytime in the next 4 years. Democrats went after Vance all weekend, actually, for his past claim that childless cat ladies run the Democratic Party. And even some Republicans said privately that they're worried his comments will further erode Trump's support among women. Michelle?
It's so funny to be like, oh, it's just a joke. We're just joking. And then the Republicans are like leaning into that. I genuinely feel like this is how some leftists and how some rad femmes, rad libs in general are like, when Republicans would be like, you guys are hysterical, blue-haired, joy killers, woke scolds in general. You don't want to have any fun. You don't want to have anybody have any fun whatsoever. And then some people will hear that and be like, no, that is literally me. I think that the best way to possibly moralize everything, the best way to show how fucking real I am and how committed I am to my own personal political ideology is to show you how much I fucking despise normal people having fun and like wear that on your fucking sleeve. It's something that I obviously hate and have spent the past 5 years of my professional career ripping into the leftover, right? And because I think it just plays really poorly. Like nobody gives a shit. The only thing people have are their fucking treats. So why are you trying to take people's treats away? Okay? It's just dumb. And that is basically what the Republicans are doing on the other side. Okay? They're annoying. They're fucking loud. And they're really, more importantly than anything else, gross. Okay? They're gross. They're sweaty. They're really fucking sweaty. And they love moralizing about their own worldview, about how like you have to abide by their standards. I think that is something that Americans broadly do not respond positively to.